Hello and welcome back to another episode of Taking Back Saturday, our Happy Buyers Club podcast where we break down the real estate market each and every Friday to help home buyers build confidence, follow a process and hopefully buy really happy. I'm your host, Chayse Jones, and joining me as he does each and every week is real estate daddy Sam Hunter. How are you, friend?
Feeling the pressure this morning, Chayse. We've got literally 15 minutes to do a 15-minute podcast.
Love it. Well, listen, we spruik the 15 minutes, so let's live that promise right here and now.
Live the budget.
A market wrap podcast. We come to the end of October. Stats are out. Give us the headlines.
For sure. We do not want this show to be data week in, week out, but I think once a month, it's probably good to reflect and get a sense for what smarter people than us think is happening in the real estate market to hopefully help everybody make better decisions. And as you say at the top of the show, buy happy. Brisbane's still on the up, but I would say we are steadily on the up rather than running away from the rest of the market. Depending on who you get your data from, who is your Bible, CoreLogic has Brisbane overall prices up at 0.7%, houses up 0.6%, units and townhouses up 0.8%. Average those out is a nice 0.7%. I reckon that data is built off the back of really good stuff selling and a lot of other stuff sitting.
Yeah, and you feel that out on a Saturday.
For sure.
And I think that's probably the context that a lot of people who aren't getting this data, like either paying for it or getting emailed it or, having a trusted advisor giving it to them, are probably feeling it. I think on a Saturday, you can probably sense that there isn't the line up down the street. And if it is, it's for something that is hot.
Special.
Yeah. So for the most part, average stock and less than average stock is probably not moving as fast, and that's probably reflected in that data.
I agree with that. I think the headline that came out that was, it's sort of like winter is coming kind of things where Domain put a headline out to say Brisbane house prices nearing the $1 million mark.
The median.
I think Domain has the median at 994,000, and every real estate agent under the sun jumped on board and shared that story and put it out there. And if you're a first-time buyer looking to get into the market, that's the last thing that you probably want to see.
That's spooky.
For sure. Title of this podcast, How Spooky is the October Market? CoreLogic, interestingly, and that is our sort of data Bible, I guess. They've been doing it a really long time. It's who the banks trust. It's usually more conservative.
Yeah, a little bit.
In our opinion. And that, I think, is also a really good thing when you're making smart, long-term real estate decisions. They had it closer to 980 grand. Is there much of a difference between 980 and 994 other than a headline? No, not really. Long and the short of it is it's pretty expensive to buy a house in Brisbane at the moment. And that's due largely because listing numbers are still pretty low. Like, again, the other headline that the media has run with over the past probably 2 months, 3 months is that listing numbers have increased. There's a lot of stock back on the market. It's higher than last year. It's higher than the 5-year average. 5 years ago was 2019. And then we've had this weird world that we've lived in ever since. So a 5-year average is not what I would class as a pretty traditional 5-year average. And in Brisbane, which is where most of you listen to this podcast from.
Shout out if you're not.
For sure. We're still way lower than average. Yeah. And that is why prices continue to grow and why the good stuff does still have a lineup at the front and why average stuff or overpriced stuff still has people going through it because they just don't have enough choice. There's more choice now than there has been in the last 12 months, but there's still not enough for prices to do anything other than go one way.
Yeah. So people should be expecting that prices are not coming backwards. They might not even be flattening, but it's maybe the urgency in the market on certain products is going to change.
Great way of putting it.
The good stuff is going to still sell on weekend one. You need to be still proactive enough to make that call on a Saturday afternoon to be like, hey, is this selling this afternoon? If it is, I want to be involved in that conversation. How do I buy this property? Don't expect that you're going to get a call on Monday to say, hey, what's your feedback? Hey, what did you think of it? Because every chance that calls to say, hey, yeah, it's sold on, Saturday night for X price. The stuff that's a bit slower, and you'll feel it. You'll be in there. You'll be one of 4 groups as opposed to one of 24 groups. That's the stuff that might transact a little slower. Be proactive. Make that call. Make sure that you can take your time to, buy well as opposed to just rushing into it. But you'll sense that pace is different for certain products within the market right now.
I'll give you an example. Same agent, 2 properties back to back on Saturday. One's open at 10, one's open at 10:45. One's in Seven Hills, one's in Camp Hill. One's a new build in Seven Hills, but it's the back of a battle axe block. I was one of 3 groups there. One was the neighbour, the other 2, me and another buyer's agent. Shout out to Siobhan from Hunter Gather. We went through it in the 23 minutes of the 30-minute open home that I was there. No one else did. Versus property in Camp Hill that is flat block, top of a hill, almost a city view, could be worth anything if you did the right thing to it. 17 groups, 35 people through on Saturday, another 14 through on the Sunday, right? So that just shows you the difference between a property that has even a minor objection, battle axe block, versus one that doesn't and is priced appropriately.
Yeah.
Well, maybe a little cheekily, who knows? But you know, there will be people that went through that Saturday and that Sunday that will get a phone call today to say, hey, do you want to do something? Because we're ready to sell it today. Versus the other one, probably a little bit longer.
Yeah. For those that are buying or have been looking to buy in the recent times, this data set that's showing a 7% growth, that's got to be the lowest growth though for a month on month for a year and a half,
yeah,
right?
Probably 18 months. And I think you talk to agents about that, and there are agents that think their throats have been cut because they're not just receiving multiple offers before people haven't gone and seen a property. Like, that's not a real estate market. That's just kind of been this...
It's been crazy.
Yeah, this sort of crazy, curated, very unusual market that we've been in for a little while because money was so cheap for a long time. And then even with interest rates going up, it's still pretty cheap. And we're only seeing the end of it now where all these people who sort of made purchasing decisions on 1.8% fixed rates and 2.5% variable rates and things like that are like, oh, wow, 4.89% or 5.89% is expensive.
For sure. It's
What
probably
do we do?
normal.
Yeah, and that is, I genuinely think where we are now is when you start looking at proper 5 and 10 year averages from kind of now onwards, this will be about what people will expect to loan money at to go and buy a really good property. I think my view on this market, and this is probably the 60-second clip that goes out this week, is it is a great market to be buying and selling in. Like, prices are still going up, but they're going up at a pace that is sustainable. My view, anyway, in the long term. And I think from a buying perspective as well, if you find a property that ticks 9 out of 10 boxes, expect to pay a little premium for it, but that's okay because, as we always say, the house is the win. And that property will be a 9 out of 10 for somebody as and when you may decide that it's not to be yours anymore.
If you are selling.
If you're selling, prices are still going up. Like, maybe it feels fairer now for buyers in November 2024 than it did in November 2023. But it's still more expensive. Like, your house is actually worth more money. You're going to sell your house for more money now than you would have a year ago, even if it feels like you don't have those 4 offers from contracts 10 minutes after the first open.
For sure. And I think that's down to expectations, right?
100%.
And agents are in control of that for the most part. The conversations that they have, well ahead of time, pre-listing, when we're entering a campaign, how it's going to go, and the updates they give them throughout that campaign based on the feedback they're receiving. It can't be promise the world and expect the world and more. It's now, this is what the market looks like. This is conservatively what we should expect. We will do everything we can to maximize that, and you are going to get a great result. But the days of, hey, promising something wild and then not only getting the wild figure and beyond it, that ship has probably sailed.
And I think that's probably why, coming back to that sort of throwaway comment before about agents feeling like their throats have been cut, I think prices might be higher, but expectations are higher again. And a lot of sellers in the marketplace now are making decisions on what they feel their property is worth based on a story from a family member, a friend, a colleague who sold 6 months ago. And they had that 24 registered bidders and they went 200 grand above reserve. Whereas and maybe that was a 9 out of 10 property that didn't have any objections. And now these guys have got a really good house in a really good market, but they're expecting it to be a phenomenal price for a house that has been really good to them. So in their mind is a phenomenal house. And that's the danger. And that's where really good real estate agents come to the fore and they have these hard conversations up front. And most of them, at least the ones that we talk to most days, are doing that. And they're still getting great results. Other people are they're the waiters at the menu and they've got a husband and wife selling the house and they're like, we'd like the premium price, thank you, in 2 weeks. And they've gone, certainly.
Yes,
let me see what I can do for you.
Sure. We'll have that conversation in 3 weeks.
And then,
then
they have to come back out and be like, excuse me, I'm really sorry, but premium price is sold out.
Yeah, we've come back.
What are we going to do?
We actually didn't get any of those.
Yeah.
We've never have. And that's, again, we've seen it. Houses with objections doesn't mean they're not good sound properties at the right price, but for a seller it's hard for them to reconcile with having those objections. They almost need to be told what a buyer is going to see. You're like, hey, they're going to come in here and they're going to see that and that and that, and that's going to be the objection. And how are we going to handle that? Let's talk about it now before we're 3 weeks into the campaign.
For sure. And I think that comes back to, again, the podcast with Julia Doyle last week about feedback and how important it is. Like, we stress our feedback more when we don't like a property because there's no bias attached to it then. We are just giving our honest, hopefully educated, hopefully professional opinion. And it's the same thing from buyers in the marketplace. Like, if you're interested in a property, say what you want to say. But if you're not, just, again, give them the best feedback you possibly can. Tell the truth, inverted commas. Give them an opinion on what you see value, right? Because it doesn't come with the thought of, they want to buy it, so they're just telling me this to try and get it cheaper. It's going to help that seller and that agent make a very good decision so that hopefully they're not sitting on the market for 30 days or 60 days or whatever it might be.
Off the back of that, I actually had a really great phone call with someone on Friday, was giving feedback about a property that wasn't suitable. It was a layout thing. There was a bedroom straight off the living area. They want to be close to the kids, but that's understandable. The kids are young. And instead of the question being, where do you see value in the property? They're like, what's a property that you've seen that you preferred? And I was able to give her a couple of addresses saying, hey, they actually sort of like this one and this one. And she's like, great, that is really helpful for me and my sellers.
For sure.
It is. It's a great line of questioning for agents because when you're asking an average punter, where do you see value? The guard comes up a bit. They're also like, I don't know. That's their immediate response. They're not wanting to buy it, so they don't really want to give them pricing feedback. But having that line of questioning about what's something that you've seen that you preferred, bang, great. It almost gives them, it's answering two questions at once.
For sure, 100%. I think while we're pretty much, and we have this comment come back to us most weeks, is you guys always talk about houses. And I think that's probably because primarily that is what we're buying. We buy a lot of houses for families. Units and townhouses are probably worth talking about in this monthly podcast because they are a massive part of the market now. And I think if you look at the trending prices for Brisbane over the last, I would say, more than 8, less than 12 months, that unit and townhouse market has led the growth curve. It's always been above. And that is just purely because of affordability. If you look at that average house price being somewhere between $980 and $994, depending on who you use and who you trust, most big data houses agree that the unit and townhouse median price across Greater Brisbane is somewhere near 670 grand. Now, if you're buying a townhouse in the middle of the city, you know that you're probably 300 grand short in terms of median versus the reality of buying. But it just shows you the difference between levels of affordability and what is driving that market. And I think actually that charge towards the apartment townhouse market is just showing that Brisbane is growing up and it's coming of age. And we've gone through that big country town sort of mantra for so long. And now, star casinos aside, there's some cool stuff to do in this city. And actually people want to go and buy something that allows them to continue to do that cool stuff rather than just buying the typical, starter home and eating baked beans for 3 years before they can afford to renovate it.
For sure. The buying the house for the sake of buying a house is just not people's cup of tea anymore. For a lot of first home buyers or young families, townhouses are even lateral units are a genuine ownership option for them because they can see that we've got enough internal space here. Particularly the townhouse with something different, like the additional office space or the study nook or the big courtyard. Like that stuff is the point of difference. If there is, a swath of townhouses in the area, that's your point of difference. Yours is the one of one. But even just the size of a townhouse, if it's well proportioned, you might not have your own backyard, but that also means no mowing. And if you're buying in a good location, that is, say, a 5-minute walk down to a park, wow, cool. Now you've got the world's biggest backyard and the council's mowing it for 100%. You. So that's where people have come to terms with that, and it's a growing up of this city. And I think that that's going to be an option for a lot of first and young family buyers moving forward.
And a good option as well. No longer is it like, I I don't want to rent, I want to buy, I've got to buy a unit or a townhouse, I really want to buy. It's like, I bought a banging townhouse in a good location. I can still go and get a coffee on the weekends. My kids have an epic park. I can walk to school. It is very much modern urban living, and it should be celebrated.
Yeah, tell your parents. Don't shy away from it and hide the fact that you're looking at a townhouse instead of a house because they say, oh, you got to buy land.
That's it.
That's not it, guys. That's not it. You can buy a townhouse and be proud of that fact because you've bought well.
100%. All right, on that note, Chase, we're in November, coming towards the end of the year. It's Melbourne Cup Day tomorrow. I'm not going to ask you for your tip on the Melbourne Cup because horse racing sucks. What's your buying tip for November?
It's all to do with settlement timeframes. We are right now. You almost need to get the calendar out, the big monthly calendar view to work out where your settlement timeframes are, because there are some buyers that are going to want that settlement pre-Christmas. They want the result, and you want to make sure that we're not doing it Christmas Day, and some others will want that in the new year. So having those conversations around where the preference is for the vendor is very important, because offering them what they're after will be more important than ever, because there is going to be a dead spot of a few weeks over that Christmas break.
For sure.
Mate, 15 minutes and 43 seconds. We've failed the listeners today, but he's Sam. I'm Chayse. Cheers.